Hey there and welcome back. Just to recap, in the previous video we went through and added the smoothing to the rotation of the player, so we have some nicer lerping and kind of veering look to the ship when it moves now. In this video we're just going to go through and add a really simple background to the level and some bounds to stop the player from moving out, because at the moment we can fly around anywhere and we'll lose the ship if we go out of the screen. So again, this is going to be a really short video, I think, so I'll probably end up uploading a few videos this week, as they're all seeming to come out a little bit shorter than usual. So to get started on the level, all we want to do is we'll drag in a cube and we will zero this out on the location. So we'll go over and make this 0, 0, 0, and then we can just scale this out. So this will act as the background. So we want to scale this out sideways, so on the x-axis, something around 14 or 15 will be fine, and then on the z as well to go up the screen. So again, we'll just leave that at 15. The scale of 1 should be fine because this is only going to act as a viewpoint for us and a kind of backdrop to the player. What this does mean though is that we need to grab the player start and we'll just raise this a little bit. So if we put this 100 units up on the y-axis, we can see the green axis there, so we know it's the y-axis, just so that we're not inside of the ground when we begin this. And the other thing is we probably want to see this. So if we go over to the lights and we'll drag in a directional light. Now the directional light doesn't particularly matter where it is because it acts as a sun, so as long as we get the rotation correct we should be able to see the light coming from anywhere. And I think we just want to rotate this to 0, so so that should be fine there. So we can now see the background. And if you just notice that everything's slowly got lighter there and you don't like that effect, I personally don't, that is auto exposure. So if we go to the project settings and type in auto, in fact, just type in auto EX and we can find the auto exposures on. It's just adjusting the brightness to your vision, or it's meant to recreate that, and I just think it makes it harder to test what it's going to look like in demonstration and then what it's going to actually look like when you've processed the build. So if we turn that off, we can go back now and we can see that this is the actual color we'll end up with during runtime. So if we press play, that's the color of our background, rather than having it fake that lighting, which it does for some bizarre reason. So I'm just going to remove that for now. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we can just Control W the background there. And in fact, I call this the background, just so we know what that is when we look at the object. And with cube 2, if we just put this back at the 0 location again, and give this a value of 1 on the X and 15 on the Z should be, because this will be our first wall. And then we can just drag this over. And again, this is something I've tested in the past. But based on where we're going to have the camera, minus 350 works here, as we can still see just the edges of this, so we can see where the player is going to be colliding. And then all we want to do is just scale this up, and a scale of about 5 should probably do fine. Then if we press play, there's not enough light for us to actually see anything. So if you wanted to fix this, we can start rotating this around. And there we go. If we rotate the skylight that way, we can see a lot more of what's happening, but it washes everything out quite a bit. So I'm going to leave that how it was. So leave this at the 0 rotation, and all of this will be fixed when we start adding materials to this. They'll become a bit more visible, because the end effect that I'm going for is going to be quite a neon glowy type thing. We don't want too much sunlight to be affecting this anyway. So if we just grab cube 2, which will be we'll just make this one called wall, and then the next one will be called wall 2. We can just drag this across, and we want this to be 350, so exactly on the other side, and 0 that down again. And then the final two things, with one of these selected, if we press E first of all, and then hold Alt and just rotate this 90 degrees, that will create a copy, and we can move this to 0, these out on the rotation axis there, and make the y-axis 90. And all we really want to do, we'll make that 0 on the x-axis so it's in the middle, leave that 0 on the y, and then 260 on the z. And again, we'll just Alt drag this one down and just make that minus 260. So this will be our play zone, this little cube. It looks a little bit small, but when you're in there, that's actually roughly how much of the screen we take up. So the next thing is, if we go into the assets and the materials, we already have some materials in here. We're just going to create a nice simple one for the background for now. So if we right click and add a new material, and I'll just call this M_flat. It's just going to be a flat shaded material. And if we go in here If we press the numeric 3 key and left click anywhere, you'll get a color, or a vector 3 to represent color. I'm going to right click on this and we'll convert this to a parameter. And this just means that when we create a material instance in a moment, we can change this on the fly and it'll be a lot faster. And we'll just name this color over here in the parameter name. We'll plug that into the base color. And I'm going to do the same again, press 1, plug that into the roughness, right click on this, and we'll convert that single parameter into another parameter, and we'll call this one, just call that rough. Again, for the same reason, for the material instance, we can change that on the fly. I'm going to default that to 1 so we don't have any of that shininess that we don't want. And I'll apply that. Take a little while to compile and build that. And then if we go back out, right click on this, and we'll create a material instance based on the one we've just made. And we'll call this flat bg for background underscore I to show that it's an instance. And we'll just drag that onto the background. And what we can do now is we can see how material instances work in a way that this is updated on the fly very dynamically. So it gives us a lot of freedom to test and play about with things. So if we tick the color value that we just made and drag that up, we can see that we can change the color of the background really quickly, and that's all updated in real time. So if we make that white, that's now viewable. We can also play about things with the roughness, so we can get that shine back if we wanted. But again, I'm going to leave that as 1 so we get a nice flat material. And we'll save that. And then I'm just going to press Ctrl W on that and call this one flat wall. And again, underscore I so we know that it is a material instance. And now if we just shift select all of the walls, what we can do is we can drag the wall material over here into the material slot, and that will give us all of these objects a different color. So if we go in here and we can edit this, I'm going to make this something really obvious for now so that we can tell what the wall is. Just make this an orange of some sort, save that, and then if we go back, we can now see that all of the walls are an orange color. So if we hit play, it's still too dark. So just for building purposes, what we'll do is we will give this a little bit of rotation actually. So if we go back to the directional light and we'll rotate this down, I really didn't want to make it too bright, too saturated. Another way we can fix this is if we go over to the right hand side here, we can change the intensity down to something a little bit less intense. And there we go. Now we're not getting too much brightness, but we can see the walls. Now, one thing that we do want to do, because I intend on keeping these anyway, these up here aren't too important. We'll make those invisible in later videos. But these I want to show as a visible boundary to the player. So I'm going to select these two side walls, and we're going to scroll down, and we will turn off cast shadows, just because it looks a bit weird having the shadows on the side there. But it does look pretty cool having them as a wall that we can collide with. Obviously we haven't set up any of the collision yet, so we will do that a little bit later. In fact, if we just select all of the walls now, all we want to do is with all of the walls selected, we can scroll down to the collision, and we just want to set this to block all dynamic. And if we enable the overlap checks and the hit checks just to make sure that everything's fired off when we hit this, hopefully the player ship should have some collision, which it doesn't yet. So again, we're going to have to go back and add the collision to the player ship anyway, but this is all something that we can set up in the future. And the other thing, whilst we're talking about shadows, whilst we've done something with shadows already, I just want to go into the blueprint for the player ship, because the other thing is that I don't want this to look as though we're too close to something. This background isn't meant to look like a ground as such. It's just kind of to highlight the difference between the color of the player and having pitch black. So what I don't want to happen is shadow to be cast from the player, or pretty much anything else that we're going to add. So if we go back into the blueprint, we're going to go down here, and again under the lighting, just turn off the cast shadows, hit compile, and go back into play. So that looks a little bit more like what I wanted to have. Okay, so we're getting somewhere with this now. There's a lot more artwork stuff that we'll need to be doing, but this is definitely bringing everything a little bit closer to what we need. And in fact, I think there's one more thing I want to do. If we go to the materials, go back to the background material, and just so that I can see what this is changing to as I do it, I'm going to drag this into a smaller window, change this color, and just drag this down to a bit of a darker gray. That looks a bit better against the character for now. So again, at the moment, this is very much a prototyping stage. This is just so that we can see the different components as we go through and build. We're going to have a final like clean and polish video at the end of this series, so that will start making everything look a lot better. But this is now, at least we can press play and we can see that the boundaries of the map are here. The background is quite obvious now in comparison to the player as well, because it's not white. So this is just more of a visual aid for us at the moment. And also, if you wanted to get rid of this message, which is now appearing up here, we can just hit the build button, or you can drop that down and say just build lighting only, because that's only talking about the lighting needs rebuilding. But it's a really small level, so it's not going to take very much time either way. That would just get rid of that, because it can be quite annoying. It doesn't look a whole lot different, because again, we're not focusing too much on lighting right now. So that's kind of our level blocked out. That will give us a good point of reference, and we can start looking at the player collision next. And then we can add the improvement to the movement functionality that I've mentioned. So I'll leave that here for now. As ever, if you found this useful, then please do give the video a like and consider sharing this around. That really does help. If you'd like to be kept up to date with the latest content, then do feel free to subscribe to the channel. Alternatively, you can follow me on Twitter. Links for that will be in the description below. If you've considered supporting the channel, there's now a Patreon page available. And as ever, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.